been 1 year since Daniel Rickenmann became the mayor of the city of Columbia. 1 year later, I talked to him about his accomplishments and the future of the city for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Columbia Mayor Daniel Rickenmann, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Hey, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing just great. A little windy here in Charleston, but there was a lot of rain last night. But I know that obviously you have been the mayor of the city of Columbia since last January. So let me ask you this, Mayor. A year later, who is Daniel Rickenmann as mayor?
I don't know that there's a description for me. I think we're, a group of folks working together, community-wide, business community, council, neighborhoods, all working together. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't agree, but I think at the end of the day, the energy here is that the folks here in Columbia, our citizens really want us to be better than we are, and we're excited about that opportunity.
So let me just ask you a redundant question. The state of the city of Columbia is?
We're moving forward. We have a lot of construction projects going on right now. We're working on modernization of our tax code to really help us be more competitive, because we're 48% more than Charleston, 38% more than Greenville, and roughly about 24% more than Rock Hill. So our bigger sister cities we're non-competitive. So that really affects our small business, which is the backbone of our community. All the big projects, of course, get support. So we really want to change the playing field here, levelize the playing field, so everybody, small, medium, and large, have the ability to grow. And small businesses are so important because they hire here, they stay here, and they reinvest in our community. They're part of our arts. They're our theaters. They're going to our grocery stores. So it's so important that we work together, and I think that's part of what we've launched over the last year. We've been able to create a lot of business-friendly options where we're able to make it easier to get a permit, easier to get business license, have the ability not to have to pay the sewer expansion fee, which was a real issue for small businesses trying to convert spaces over. The average person was paying, I think, somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. So eliminating these hurdles, we've had an opportunity to really expand our small business footprint. We did, I think, close to 59 ribbon cuttings in the last 12 months. We've had I think the numbers in over 1,000 new business licenses. So some of those are home-based businesses and others. But the mere fact that people are out there, I think, is and thinking about Columbia as a place is a good start. So the energy's here.
Yes, sir. And, I was just in Columbia last Sunday for the women's basketball game, USC versus Missouri. So I was downtown and I saw a lot of construction going on. But how many small businesses do you project will come to the city of Columbia in the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, we're making a big effort. We're putting recruitment together where we're really going after small businesses and showing them the opportunity here, what's available. We put a catalog together about a retail space, restaurant space, putting a flyer together so that as we go to communities doing really project outreach, sitting down with restaurant groups and other folks, showing them what we have to offer. But we're doing something different too, because in a town we have 60,000 students here, roughly 8 higher learning institutions, 2 historical black colleges. So we're using our students and engaging them and helping go after businesses. So we're doing a campaign right now to get an Apple store. We don't have an Apple store here.
That's right, yeah.
So we're doing a campaign and we're going campus to campus. So we've got ambassadors at each campus. So we're going to flood Apple with social media from all these students to show them the opportunity that's here. But they're becoming engaged. They're helping us put together a map, make it easier for people to engage with each other. And so they gave us insight of why some of the young people weren't staying here, not knowing about internships, wanting more downtown living. They're not interested in buying a home and commuting. They want to live downtown. They want to work and play and live all in the same area. So we're addressing those.
And how many young, residents do you have currently in the city of Columbia?
Well, we only have about 3,400 people living downtown. We want to be 9 to 10 to 12,000 downtown. So it's a lofty goal and a push. But when you look at Charleston and Greenville, the success of their core is because people are living in downtown, and so we've got to capture that. And we've looked into the middle market, which is a big market that we see changing. People. Single family homes is not what people are preferences. And so you got three categories there. You got millennials who have, I want to be able to shut the door and travel when I want. I want to be able to walk everywhere. You've got baby boomers who are not interested in having a big house or a yard and all that, and they want the convenience of the entertainment factor. And then we have single moms with no kids at home. A category that quite frankly, we have forgotten about, and it's a larger category than what? Well, they want a nicer place to live, but they also want the flexibility to go see their kids, travel, and do the things that they didn't do while they were working. So, we're really trying to address that and go after partners to help develop those. We took away parking minimums downtown. We're trying to get rid of our parking lots and put buildings there. Really take a look at all the possibilities and share those with people out there.
Now, Mayor, I want to get back to that parking lot situation in just a second. But when you talk about the middle market, what other trends are you in the city looking at right now?
Well, we're embarking on a study called the Imagine. Greenville did it. And so it gave them the basis of, hey, we need to start rezoning. We need quadruplexes, duplexes, condos, townhomes, and to fit for the future. 85% of their housing needs are based off those categories we talked about: baby boomers, millennials, and single moms. Well, they all were asking for smaller units. Well, for so long we pushed for single family home that we put ourselves in a unique position that now we have empty lots. We have different places that we can do things creatively to address that. And so we're changing our zoning laws and things to allow these things to happen.
Now, how many empty lots do you currently have in the city?
Sorry?
Yeah, how many empty lots do you have in the city?
Oh, man, we just tore down 68 houses in neighborhoods that were condemned, unable. So, that's just the beginning. The city had 52 lots that we identified that haven't been used. So we put out an RFP. So we're building some single family homes, some townhomes, and then looking at quadruplexes and duplexes to really encourage people to move back into our downtown neighborhoods. And then, if you look across the scope, we made parking such a premium in commercial districts and so forth. And today, as people are building parking garages, everything, tucking them behind buildings so that you're utilizing those buildings, which, means all those parking lots that are empty now are being brought up to code for stormwater. We're getting more tax bases. We pushed away from vertical growth for so long. People had this fear, but I think everybody starts to understand if we're going to have a strong core and a strong basis, we got to build up our downtown, and we can't be going, horizontal. We got to go vertical to make that happen.
And where's that vertical growth right now in your city?
Well, we're starting to see it downtown. We're seeing some conversion of some old office buildings being converted into, probably even had a church downtown that was converted into apartments, and had a couple Airbnbs along with Starbucks and some other retail in there. So we're seeing some good mixed use projects. Each core now is being analyzed. So we're working with neighborhoods on everything from, road diets, because some of our roads are so wide. When you have 4 lanes of traffic, you can't connect the two neighborhoods, and people want walkability. So if we can narrow those and connect those neighborhoods, then we're getting the growth, but not only the commercial, but the residential growth in those corridors. And you look at cities like Charlotte, where the South Boulevard has turned into, a mecca of businesses and residential and corporations headquartered in there. You look at Howell Mill Road on Charlotte. Howell Mill Road behind Morris College and Georgia Tech for years was a neglected area, and now it's filled with apartments and hotels and restaurants and commercial corporate headquarters. Star Metals built a new building there. So they attracted 3 companies from Silicon Valley there. And then the apartment complex across the street is filled with young professionals who want that vibe, but they want the walkability and they want to be able to hop on the bus or the MARTA. They're not interested in dealing with traffic. And so we've got to start paying attention to that.
And, on a personal note, I mean, my family are we have to move from downtown Charleston to the suburbs. And I like being downtown. So I understand all of that.
Well, and we're seeing that issue, when I was talking to the mayor and council members down there from a labor standpoint, because people are like, well, I'm not going to commute and then pay for parking and everything else. I mean, somebody told me that parking spaces were selling downtown Charleston for $100,000. It's crazy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And I want to talk to you about that residential growth in Columbia. Where do you see that in the next 5 years?
I see it downtown. I see it. A lot of people moved out. We lost about 9% of our population over the last decade. A lot of them folks moved out. They didn't want to live in the neighborhood they grew up in. They wanted to have a bigger house, different schools. And so our concentration is to work with our school system, our realtors, and really look at the property that we have here and how do we get people back down. We're applying for Choice Neighborhood Grant, which is about a $35 million grant that we can leverage with private funding to get probably $150 to $200 million so that we can really emphasize growth in our inner city communities and build them back up. It's time to get people living back downtown, but they want new construction. They want sidewalks. They want connectivity. The schools, they want to make sure their kid has the best opportunity. So working with the schools on how do we make sure that we're working together, not against each other, as we look for development and filling those spots and making sure that, we have also providing workforce housing, because you got teachers commuting and they're tired of it. Quality of life is playing a major role in employment. And so there's a big balance there. So we've got to help where we can. So we need to make sure we have affordable housing, smaller units. We got away from high density, but there's this big growth of smaller units on smaller plots of land, grouped into, 10 or 12 homes in an area where you might have had 4. And we've disallowed that the way our zoning is now. So changing that, you're seeing some of that happen in Charlotte. Just look at some projects that some other communities did as I was at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And I was looking at what they did, and they've taken these pockets of land and been able to put 10 or 12 small homes in there, and they're filled. As soon as they build them, they're gone, because that's what people are looking for. And it gives the affordability, even for a firefighter, a police officer, a teacher, making sure they have the opportunity to live downtown.
Yes, sir. And I want to go back to that funding that you mentioned. You talked about applying for the grant. How much private funding do you need right now?
So right now, what we did is we were ahead of the game, because years ago we created a plan called East Central. And it was dominated in 29203, 29204, and parts of 29205. And what it did is it showed us where we were in our neighborhoods and where we had opportunities for commercial nodes, residential. So we had done a huge charrette. So we had all the buy-ins. So for the last year, I've had people out working with the neighborhoods, making sure that everything that was in front of us was still valid. And so now we're going to use that. So that took the planning phase out. So we're going straight after that grant. But we also understood, when we went to Washington, I understood that a lot of this money that's coming from the federal government is not formula-based. It's application-based. Well, we don't have the depth at the city to go after everything that's there. So we decided to take some of our ARPA money. We have gone out and hired third-party administrators, folks that used to work at HUD or Commerce or DOT or DOE, to help us identify options, help us learn how to apply, because the thing in DC they kept saying to us is, you got to be creative. Just just because it says this, be creative and piece lots of things together to get big. We're working on rail realignment in downtown. We're working on housing. We're going to redo a hydro plant that's 10 megawatts worth of clean energy that we can use to put back, and the money that we're saving, then we can invest in more renewable in our downtown. We're looking at infrastructure fixes and adding more grid capability, making sure that all parts of our community have acceptable broadband. We've got some places that have broadband, but they're inconsistent. Well, that affects everybody in that household, somebody who's working from home, a student trying to get all their extra work, especially when we have a shutdown day because of weather, everything's online. Well, if that kid doesn't have the ability to stay online, then they've lost. And we've already lost a lot during COVID. So, really going after every bit and piece that we can from the federal government, leveraging it with our local government as well.
And let me ask you this, Mayor, and this might be an irrelevant question, but should the state of South Carolina make internet a utility?
Oh, I think so. I think we need to get deep involved with the money that's coming down. If we had a statewide program, especially, and you look at some of the other cities that have partnered with Comcast and others, how do we create that? I think we all are willing to pay our fair share to make sure that everybody has the opportunity, to do that. So there are ways. It's not like this is some new idea and some new age idea. We can take what other communities done, and I think as we see the growth of 5G by AT&T, trying to create better relationships, that we can make sure some of our challenged areas are getting everything they need.
And I know you're busy, so whenever you need to cut me off, you just let me know.
No, we're good.
Okay. But let me ask you, what are those areas right now that are lacking that infrastructure, specifically in Columbia?
Well, I'll give you an example. So we have a voucher housing complex right now that we're having challenges with, and we have for a long time. So we really want to emphasize improving the quality of life there, because we've had 157 reports of crime there. Over the holidays, we had almost 300 units with no heat for 3 days, and so we had to intervene to come and make the ownership put those folks in hotels. We went and inspected every unit. We're meeting with the ownership because we want to get it fixed. People should not even think that that's acceptable, number one. Number two, if we want to deter violence, crime, domestic violence, and all the things that breed from this, we've got to change our structures. And that means that the neighborhoods are kept clean, that they have sidewalks, they have access to health care and everything else. We're looking at building a community center there. We have built a ball field, but also a gymnasium, and really, but we also got to figure out how do we break up the units without displacing anybody and making it smaller footprints. We need a defined area for seniors, we don't, and things like that, being creative without moving, because typically what happens when a complex of that size goes through a transition, people get lost. They lose their support system. Kids get lost in the school system, benefit, you name it. It just creates a whole. So we have to be creative and go, all right, how do we do this where we don't have to move anybody out and we can fix it, make it manageable, because for something like this to happen is just unacceptable in our community. Just unacceptable.
And what type of feedback are you getting from those residents right now?
Well, they're now engaged because they feel, but I'll tell you, the only reason that we knew they didn't have heat is because somebody was shot and we were doing an investigation. Even our community leaders there that normally are there working on after school program didn't know about it. So where's the breakdown there? And so now, we're using our code enforcement, our fire department, and everybody to start going to wherever we get complaints and inspecting. Things of mold. We're seeing, lack of response on heats and repairs, roofs leaking. It's just very disappointing that, and I think some of it is not hiring the right people to do the work. You got to have professionals when you're dealing with gas. The fact that somebody didn't pass away during this issue, people were sleeping with their ovens open. That's what the stories that we heard as we were knocking on door to door. So, we went in, the water system there, which they have a steam heat program. We don't own it. The complex owned it, but we went in and fixed it because they kept telling us they couldn't get it done. So we came in with a crew, had it done, and then we started inspecting all the units. And, we're obviously, in negotiations, finding and things, but we are going to fix the quality of life in these neighborhoods, period.
And now that you all went in and actually fixed that, do you all send a bill to that landlord?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And we're giving them citations for every violation that we found. Had units with no smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors. So, for us, this is unacceptable. And we've got to change it, but we got to have everybody involved. It's, you got to help clean up your neighborhood. You got to be invested in working with us because it's only going to work if we all come together. And we want to improve the quality of life. I don't think anybody wants to live in a neighborhood that's trashed or has high crime. They want to have an opportunity to excel. I mean, that's all I hear from people is I just want an opportunity. Let me choose my path, but, give me the opportunity.
Yes, sir. And let me go back to population growth, Mayor. What constraints and threats do you see with future population growth in Columbia?
Well, I think part of it is our tax structure has kept us from attracting some of the smaller businesses in the growth. Some of the unintended consequences, like our design guidelines for downtown and our major quarters, are 25 years old. Well, they're hurting small businesses when people have to go through multiple hearings and stuff, and they never really know what they can do. And then neighborhood protests this, or they don't get approved. Well, they just wasted resources. Well, that gives us a bad reputation, so people push away. So that has a lot to do with it. And I think finally, to be quite honest, we've got the business community and the neighborhoods and government all realize that we are the capital city and we have to work together. You can't have a good neighborhood and a bad business community. You got to have both that need to be on the same page. And so bringing people together, working on what I would say is good growth with emphasis of building up these corridors and, saving our big towers for the midtown, but pushing, 3 and 4, 5, 6-story complexes where we got retail on the bottom, people living up top, creating density. We talk about food deserts and stuff, but you can't solve that if you don't have density. You got to have people there shopping or they're not going to stay. But we also got to, safe, healthier communities, what we push for. And so, all of those pieces come together.
And Mayor, I hope you can hear me do all the way out here, but how do you have good growth with, say, smart growth?
It's a balance. And sometimes we just have to say, look, let's just look at what other communities done in similar situations. And I think sometimes we have folks who have not had that opportunity. So we're doing more and more to capture that in film and in pictures and sharing this. Say, look, this is what we could have. This is what we can attract. And all we need is 1 or 2 of these investors to come in and start something, and then it's a domino effect. So we've got to share what we have. People tell me all the time, they're like, why don't you tell people all this? When you start talking about 60,000 students and, these higher educations, the rivers, there's no other city in South Carolina has 3 major highways that encompass it. That we can travel anywhere within 2 hours and be in a whole different region. The connectivity for us to Charlotte, to Atlanta, to Charleston, to Greenville, the inner port comes through. I mean, there's so many assets. We're 1,000 square miles from 75% of the population at a third of the cost of living. So we got to share that information with folks.
And how are you sharing that information right now?
That's the problem. We haven't aggressively marketed. We are very good at letting you know about road closings and other things, but we don't have a marketing team. We're getting ready to hire a marketing team. We've been working on a retail pamphlet, a company, but we're also taking advantage. The University of South Carolina has had the #1 international business master's program for 2 decades. Well, nobody's taking the time to see where that alumni is. Now, you got to figure there has to be a percentage of that alumni that is in C-suite somewhere, or who owns their own company or whatever. we should be marketing to them. They have an emotional attachment to Columbia. Come see where we are. Bring your back office. Bring your cybersecurity. Bring one of your divisions here. We've got built-in workforce. We've got low cost. We have plenty of space for growth. You can buy used or build new. We have it here. And we haven't traditionally done that.
Wow. So how do you foresee the city's population to grow at a rate comparable to what is forecast to be in the next few years?
Well, look, the Southeast is where people are moving. We know that. Every major financial institution is saying it's coming. Raleigh has had incredible double-digit growth. Greenville's had it. Charleston's having it. Tampa's having it. Nashville's having it. Atlanta's having it. Columbia's not, because of our cost structure. And that's why this tax modernization, we want to be able to reduce taxes so that we're even with all our sister cities here. It'll take an 8 year, but the fact that we're talking about doing it is sparking more interest here. People are coming going, if y'all do this, we're going to start investing now because we know it's coming. We just haven't sold ourselves, and I think some of it is we've had mixed messages. You got the flagship university saying one thing, you've got the city saying another thing, you've got recruitment groups saying another, you got the airport saying another. So bringing everybody together and say, let's have a united message here, and let's talk about who we are and what we are.
Now, Mayor, how much would you reduce the taxes by in the next 5 years?
Well, if we can our goal is to reduce it to what a homeowner pays, so from a 6% to 4%, which puts us on an even playing field. It's about 35% reduction, and that's what we see the difference between the different communities at this stage. And that's great for because we're able to do it for $30 million investments and other. But we got a lot of small businesses. And we have opportunities for people to be a small business, own their building, live downtown, second homes the same way. We talk a lot about, the cost of rental. It's 3.5 months worth of collection for the average rental to pay property tax. Well, that stops investment, that stops competition. And some people are like, well, you're just going to make the landlords that are existing here richer. I'm like, no, we're not. We're creating a competitive nature, which means new products coming. So they either can start investing and getting more competitive, or they're not going to have tenants. People are going to go to a new, more efficient, and nicer quality at a lower rate.
So what's that new product? What are those new products right now?
So people today, that are coming in and getting a tax incentive or so forth, are being able to now get nicer quality, more efficiency. We have some folks that are living in older products in our communities, and during the winter and summer, their power bills are more than their rent. We're working with HUD on weatherization programs, trying to knock those out, do more of that, especially in senior housing. Going after that, we need to invest in property, but when the property tax bill is it limits the money that they have, and they can't continue to raise the rent at the same time, because then they're not going to have the tenant that can afford to go there. So it's a little bit of catch-22. So biting, as they say, the old Maasai saying, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. That's what we're doing, one bite at a time.
So what is the city's current tax base?
So for us, so like I said earlier, we're 48% more expensive than Charleston. On the commercial side, homeowners across the state are on equal footing, but with our millage rate and where it is, we've just become uncompetitive. Greenville's 38, so I lost a $60 million apartment complex here because the unit estimate from the assessor's office is going to be about $5,000 a unit. The same project they built in Greenville, almost to the T, was $3,200. Even at a 50% over a 10-year break, doesn't make the numbers work, so they're not going to invest here. So those are the challenges. It's both in housing needs on the rental component, but also on senior housing, and then obviously the small businesses. And so if we can make it affordable for little guys, then we can get the incubator. We're pushing, cybersecurity. We're pushing small business. We've engaged with several folks. We've started some new incubators. I mean, we're trying to show everybody that, hey, we can levelize the playing field so that if you want to be a small business, you can do it here affordably and have a great quality of life.
So what's more important for the city right now, Mayor? Is it building new homes and commercial space, or actually rehabbing, expanding, and better utilizing what you have as far as homes?
We need both. We have to do both to stay afloat. I mean, just our attainable housing needs over the next decade, through the study that we did on affordable housing and attainable housing needs, I think it's roughly 16 to 18,000 units over the next decade. Well, so that's all different parts. So then when you add in our future needs for baby boomers and others, on top of that, we're having a lot of transition. So you gotta be able to do both. And so we need to push for rehab. We need to put investment in existing stock, leverage the money that we can, and being creative. We've got several projects that could bring some workforce housing, attainable housing units to our city, but they have gaps. And so there are 5 projects between us and the county that probably need about $10 million worth of gap funding. They've gotten state allotments on tax credits from the state housing, but there's still a gap for cost. So we're trying to figure out how do we help them fill that gap. And maybe we're creative is that we offer some type of tax credit that could be transferable that they can maybe sell in the open market and get another investor to do that, because we can't afford. I mean, that 10 million, if we went out there right now, would be gone tomorrow. So then what are you going to do after that? That's the spare change we had. So if we can create a different tax incentive to fill that gap, then we can further growth and start picking off these gaps that we're having one by one by one.
And what are those other gaps that you're foreseeing right now?
Well, attainable housing, the workforce housing downtown, affordable units, smaller units, and what we're hoping is that we start building hopefully some towers that we can mix units in. Charlotte's had a pretty good model where they've done that, several units downtown, and some of their apartment complexes, Crosland built years ago, had already built in that model. So, everybody's storefront looks the same. Door front looks the same, but the unit may be a little smaller or different, or it may be subsidized through a different tax credit allows that. So looking at how do we retain folks downtown, being creative. And like I said, there's just so many examples out there. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. We just have to leverage our dollars smart.
Yes, sir. And I have 2 more questions for you, Mayor. How many homes in the city have actually been built at a fairly consistent rate?
I think we're at about 46,237 homes in Columbia. Unfortunately, 27,000 homes of those are rented. So, we got to really push on the home ownership side as well as affordable housing on the other. Kind of really like to see us have a stronger presence and program, especially to help people transition getting out of public housing. We had closed down a public housing unit last year, and there were residents that had been there for 40 years. And when I heard that, it's what I realized that we have failed, and we've got to figure out how we leverage. And that's the main reason we started going to hire a HUD consultant, because we need to have more opportunities and take advantage and better utilize the funding we get to push forth home ownership and affordable, attainable housing downtown. And new products. We just can't continue to put people into older units that aren't energy efficient. It's just the cost for that individual keeps them from making that transition to get into a better unit, into a better housing situation, and hopefully home ownership. It's the quickest way to create individual and generational wealth, as we all know. So, that's a big push for us. And, hopefully we'll have the first 10 houses on the city lots built by the summer, late summer, early fall. And we've already got some folks that we know are going to transition. So they have been working with the Housing Authority through their program to get themselves set up for success to have home ownership. They're going to be able to get into a home that they own that is cheaper than what they're paying in rent.
There you go.
Energy efficient, new construction, that's what we're pushing for.
Now, one last question for you, Mayor. What is it? Is it affordable housing or is it attainable housing?
Yeah, I think it's both.
Okay.
I think you got to have both, and attainable is what I heard from a lot of people as we were doing a lot of walk through neighborhoods, and folks were like, I don't want you to use affordable because it gives a bad notice. I said, but we got to have affordable. You got to have subsidized units. They said yes, but think about it in attainable. Everybody wants something they can obtain and maintain and live in good quality. So use that away. It takes the fear factor. I think people are giving affordable housing such a bad name, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so we're trying everything we can to change that perception that people have and understand how important it is for our community growth, because we are a community that serves all people, not just one segment.
Now, how many, say, I'm looking at one of them right now here in Charleston, but how many senior housing units do you need right now for the next 10 years?
Well, we've got 3 senior housing units that are in the Columbia Housing Authority that we're trying to help them bring in some private developers to help them replace because they're outdated. But we're also seeing a big need in our neighborhoods where older folks can't afford and physically can't keep up or maintain their properties, but they don't want to live. That's where their support is. They know the grocery store. That's where their hairdresser is. That's where their doctor is. So how do we change that and start making investment? So that's what we're trying to get done.
Yes, sir. Well, I would love to ask you some more questions, but I'm running out of time. But Columbia Mayor Daniel Rickenmann, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
No, thank you very much. I hope you have a great day, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome anytime.